Our planet has survived the billions of years of catastrophic events that made it the world we live on now. But one day, there will be an event so disastrous that it will destroy this floating rock and end this experiment known as humanity. After the lengthy number of possibilities, we've narrowed down our list to the top 7 earth-shattering events. Would we be sucked into an endless void? Could a second star appear and fry our planet? Or is death waiting just below Earth's crust? Whether it was the breakup of Pangea or the meteor that took out the dinosaurs, Earth has been through more than one apocalyptic event. These events changed our planet's geography while ushering in new ages for the life forms that followed. And that's usually been at the expense of the creatures who were already here. But somewhere in our planet's future lies an extinction event so devastating that it might not simply take out all of humanity, but the Earth as well. And in a matter of time, our world could return to dust. So, what would it take to rip apart the Earth completely? Stargazing can bring a sense of wonder that calms your mind, but that may be over now, because that shooting star you spotted isn't here to grant your wish. You may want to duck. Hurricanes remain one of the most deadly natural events on our planet, and they leave a trail of death and destruction wherever they land. But if an asteroid hits an ocean with enough force and heat, hurricanes would be like fluff balls compared to what would come next. A big enough asteroid would superheat the oceans to over 49 degrees, and this could set off a massive storm known as a Hypercane. Winds would move as fast as the speed of sound, and clouds would reach heights of up to 40 kilometers. The winds would shoot water and aerosols into the stratosphere, destroying the ozone layer. So even if the winds didn't carry you into space, you could get fried by the radiation on Earth's surface. This gas giant has twice the mass of all the planets in our solar system combined. And the gases swirling around inside Jupiter's atmosphere are the same materials that make up the Sun. But if Jupiter became 1,000 times more massive, that distant yellow dot would wreak havoc on our planet. With that much mass, Jupiter would turn into a star. Since this new star would be right in the middle of the solar system, planetary bodies would change their orbits. Earth could get pulled in closer to Jupiter and get scorched by the heat coming off the former planet. Or even worse, gravitational forces could make our world a rogue planet. That means we'd be sent away into space outside the solar system, endlessly roaming the universe in search of a new home. Without the heat of the sun to keep us warm, the surface of the Earth would freeze over, killing all life on our planet. But maybe we shouldn't focus on a star that hasn't formed yet and concentrate on the one we have. After all, this ball of gas makes life possible on our planet, but since it burns through 600 million tons of hydrogen every second, it's only a matter of time before this power source is used up. And when that occurs, the sun's core will become saturated with helium and begin to shrink. The increased pressure and temperature would cause the sun to spit out massive amounts of energy. The sun's outer layers would expand, creating a deadly heat wave on Earth. Our oceans would evaporate into thin air, and the radiation would scorch the planet's surface. Finally, the sun, once the giver of life, would swallow up what's left of our molten planet. And if the sun keeps expanding, our solar system would face a new threat. Oh man, it just keeps getting worse. If the sun gains even more mass before collapsing, you could witness the birth of one of the most mysterious forces in the universe: a black hole. The product of a dying star, the gravitational pull of this void can rip apart other stars and planets. Right now, the sun is too small to create one of these catastrophes, but if a black hole appears in front of Earth, the uneven gravitational pull would start deforming the planet. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions would break out all over the planet, and as you come closer to the black hole's event horizon, this monster might stretch out this world like a rubber band. A black hole sucks in matter by compressing it horizontally, making it look like a noodle. We call this spaghettification. Every bit of our planet would be stretched into a string of atoms and fed into this hungry void. Do you think Earth's future couldn't get any worse? Well, come on, this is what if, and right now, 10 to 20 volcanoes are erupting across our planet, spewing ash and gas into the atmosphere. But if every volcano on Earth exploded at once, you couldn't escape the fumes and heat, no matter where you live. Rocks reaching 1,000 degrees would travel as fast as 700 kilometers per hour. With such a massive amount of molten rock slamming onto the surface, the planet could lose its balance and the poles could realign. A thick layer of ash and gas would suffocate Earth and eventually block out all the sunlight. And while the lava cools, the temperature on Earth would drastically drop, sending us into another ice age. While this event wouldn't necessarily end our entire planet, it would destroy any chance of sustaining life until those clouds clear up. The Earth makes one full rotation on its axis every 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.1 seconds. And it's not moving at the same speed everywhere. The rotational speed varies depending on your distance to the poles. If you're at the equator, it moves the fastest at a rate of 460 meters per second. At the North or South Pole, it's moving the slowest. Technically, it's not moving at all. This rotation makes Earth suitable for life. The diurnal cycle, or the shifting between day and night, helps keep the planet at a habitable temperature. Earth's rotation is the driving force of weather patterns. Even tides are affected by the Earth's spin. So, if we were to accelerate this rotation, would we completely destabilize the climate? If you increased the rotational speed by 0.45 meters per second, our days would be shorter, but only by a minute and a half. You might not even notice the change.
I don't know.
But even with this slight increase, sea levels would rise by several centimeters, or a few inches. Yeah, the water around the poles would migrate toward the equator. Now, if you increased this acceleration to 45 meters per second, then a single day would be about 22 hours. You'd start to feel confused, almost like jet lag. We'd also need to add a few more days to the year. But for sea levels, it would be a dramatic change. The world's oceans at the equator would rise as much as 9 to 20 meters. Places like New York, Venice, and Mumbai would be submerged. Millions of people would be displaced. Now, if we doubled the current rotation speed to 920 meters per second, disaster would strike. Water would cover everything except for the highest mountains like Kilimanjaro or the highest summits of the Andes. Satellites orbiting the planet would be out of sync as they need to orbit at a speed that matches our rotation. This would disrupt communications, television broadcasting, and military operations. And you would notice some significant weather changes. The air would be heavy with moisture. Dense fog, clouds, and constant rain would be the norm in regions near the equator. If you keep speeding things up, at some point you could fly off the planet. That's because the centrifugal force of the rotation would be enough to overcome the gravity keeping you on the surface. This would happen at a speed of 7,886 meters per second. And you would experience reverse rain. Yeah, droplets of water would move upward in the atmosphere instead of falling. Now, if you pushed the speed to 11,000 meters per second, the Earth's crust would begin to flatten at the poles and bulge around the equator. Enormous earthquakes would rattle the planet. There would be little chance that anything on Earth could survive. But if you were to crank the velocity up some more,
brace yourself,
like to the speed of light, things would get wild. If the Earth rotated at a speed of 299,792 kilometers per second, that would be 652,000 times faster than today. The dimensions of the planet would change. Once a sphere, the Earth would contract into a thin disc-like shape, and so would you, along with every other object. You could finally say the Earth is flat.
The Earth is flat and stationary.
Rotating at this extreme speed would distort time on Earth. It would slow down so much that it would eventually stop. You would freeze in time, so hopefully you'd be caught in a good moment. Earth could become a tiny black hole. That's because an object moving at the speed of light has an infinite mass. Yeah, nothing would be making it out of this situation alive. A Category 6 hurricane is about to rock New York. Category 5 is the highest classification a storm can get. These storms have wind speeds of 252 kilometers per hour or higher, and they're catastrophic. Homes get destroyed, large areas are rendered uninhabitable, and the power outages could last for weeks, even months. But with the warming effects of climate change on our oceans and atmosphere, a whole new classification could be added to the mix. Category 6. A superstorm this strong would make a Category 5 storm seem like a windy walk in the park. The very first seed of this tropical storm would form in October, late into hurricane season. It would start as a low-pressure weather system that creates clouds and thunderstorms. 10 days later, this tropical wave, as it's known, would evolve into a tropical storm in the Caribbean. But it wouldn't stop there. After a few more days, it's officially Hurricane What If. And as it passes over Jamaica and Cuba, it would continue to grow in size and force, climbing from a Category 1 to 3 and even up to 5. From New York, you'd see the damage What If is causing in its path, but you still wouldn't worry. Normally, these storms curve east and out to sea before they hit you. This time, you wouldn't be so lucky. 3 weeks after it began, the storm would shatter records to become the biggest, strongest hurricane ever. Making its first landfall in New Jersey, it would slam the state with wind speeds up to 300 kilometers per hour. When Hurricane Sandy made landfall here in 2012, the wind speeds were less than half of that, and when all was said and done, Sandy caused around 2 million people to lose power, $19 billion in damages, and left 43 dead. When our Category 6 hurricane makes landfall in New York, you should expect astronomically more damage than this. The storm would be larger in size than half of the United States. That's when the real chaos would begin. Storm surges over 8 meters would cause rapid and dangerous flooding all over the city, from the beaches to the streets to the tunnels. Without mass evacuations, millions would be stranded or in immediate danger of drowning. Water would gush into the subway stations. It would sweep buses and cars down the street. Wastewater plants would be impacted, resulting in untreated sewage mixing with local waterways. If you were caught outside, you would be certainly fighting for your life. Powerful winds would make flying debris a constant hazard. A Category 6 storm would make the smallest objects into deadly projectiles, especially shards of glass from damaged skyscrapers that would sway in the wind like trees. If the wind managed to penetrate your storm-proofed building, all that air would make the roof and walls cave in, and that would mean even more projectile material in the wind. The power would go out too. All of New York City and its nearly 9 million residents would be in total darkness. Vital services such as healthcare, transportation, and communication would be completely cut off. Millions of people would be desperate for rescue. Before all this is over, you'd find yourself briefly in the eye of the storm. Here, everything would seem calm. The pressure in the center of this storm would be so low it would be like standing on a mountain peak 1,500 meters above sea level. Yeah, you'd be gulping for air. Finally, the storm would subside. On land, there would no longer be warm ocean water to fuel it. But with so much infrastructure destroyed, you'd have no way out except by boat. As you traveled through the flooded streets of Manhattan, you'd see the whole city completely ruined. The power would be out in Times Square, millions could lose their homes, and many would die.
Life on Earth has ended several times before, and it's safe to say it will happen again. Think you're prepped for these scenarios? Let us know in the comments. Of course, we based these doomsday predictions around science and observable facts, but some things are beyond our understanding, like what if the threat to our existence wasn't miles underground? What if it was less than 2 meters below? What if there was a zombie apocalypse? Well, start working on your cardio because that's a story for another What If.